Morning, church. Hope everyone's okay. Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers. Thank you for everything you all do for us. A reading from 1 Samuel chapter 1. The birth of Samuel. There was a certain man from Ramathaim, a Zophite, from the hill country of Ephraim, whose name was Elkanah, son of Jeroham, the son of Elihu, the son of Tohu, the son of Zoph, an Ephraimite. He had two wives. One was called Hannah, and the other Peninnah. Peninnah had children, but Hannah had none. Year after year, this man went up from town to worship and sacrifice to the Lord Almighty at Shiloh, where Hophni and Phinehas, the two sons of Eli, were priests of the Lord. Whenever the day came for Elkanah to sacrifice, he would give portions of the meat to his wife Peninnah and to all her sons and daughters. But to Hannah he gave a double portion, because he loved her, and the Lord had closed her womb. Because the Lord had closed Hannah's womb, her rival kept provoking her in order to irritate her. This went on year after year. Whenever Hannah went up to the house of the Lord, her rival provoked her, till she wept and would not eat. Her husband Elkanah would say to her, "Hannah, why are you weeping? Why don't you eat? Why are you downhearted? Don't I mean more to you than your 10 sons?" Once they had finished eating and drinking in Shiloh, Hannah stood up. Now the priest was sitting on his chair by the doorpost of the Lord's house. In her deep anguish, Hannah prayed to the Lord, weeping bitterly. And she made a vow, saying, "Lord Almighty, if you will only look on your servant's misery and remember me, and not forget your servant, but give her a son, then I will give him to the Lord for all the days of his life, and no razor will ever be used on his head." As she kept on praying to the Lord, Eli observed her mouth. Hannah was praying in her heart, and her lips were moving, but her voice was not heard. Eli thought she was drunk and said to her, "How long are you going to stay drunk? Put away your wine." "Not so, my lord," Hannah replied. "I am a woman who is deeply troubled. I have not been drinking wine or beer. I was pouring out my soul to the Lord. Do not take your servant for a wicked woman. I have been praying here out of the great anguish and grief." Eli answered, "Go in peace, and may the God of Israel grant you what you have asked of him." She said, "May your servant find in favor your eyes." Then she went her way and ate something, and her face was no longer downcast. Early the next morning, they arose and worshipped before the Lord, and then went back to their home at Ramah. Elkanah made love to his wife Hannah, and the Lord remembered her. So in the course of time, Hannah became pregnant and gave birth to a son. She named him Samuel, saying, "Because I asked the Lord for him." When her husband Elkanah went up to all of his family to offer the annual sacrifice to the Lord and to fulfill his vow, Hannah did not go. She said to her husband, "After the boy is weaned, I will take him and present him before the Lord, and he will live there always." "Do what seems best to you," her husband Elkanah told her. "Stay here until you have weaned him. Only the Lord make good his word." So the woman stayed at home and nursed her son until she had weaned him. After he was weaned, she took the boy with her, young as he was, along with the 3-year-old bull and an ephah of flour and a skin of wine, and brought him to the house of the Lord at Shiloh. When the bull had been sacrificed, they brought the boy to Eli, and she said to him, "Pardon me, Lord, as surely as you live, I am the woman who stood here beside you praying to the Lord. I prayed for this child, and the Lord has granted me what I asked of him. So now I give him to the Lord. For his whole life he will be given over to the Lord." And he worshipped the Lord there.
Thank you, Rafi. Good morning, church. Good morning, church. I'm really loud. Good morning, church. It's such a joy and privilege to bring the word. And the story of Hannah is such a beautiful story, and I've titled my preach, Hannah, Pain into Praise. In If we see the life of Hannah, she started with barrenness, and then the Lord blessed her with a child. She started with pain, anguish, hurt, emptiness, void, but the Lord blessed her. A little bit about Hannah, to speak about Hannah. She was one of the wives of Elkanah. She was considered to be a woman who was barren, infertile, and she was looked down upon. But there's something about her so significant that changes. You know, she does something that changes. And I could imagine what Hannah, I can't imagine, but Hannah was going through such a plight of saying, Lord, my womb is barren. And she's looked down upon everybody around her. In her own family, she was looked upon. And nothing could fill the void of not having a child in her life. She lived around people constantly nagging her and saying, hey, you can't bear a child, made fun of. But there's something about Hannah that we can learn this morning. There's something about Hannah that I learned, and I'd like to share with you. The first thing about what Hannah is, Hannah was a woman of pursuit. The slide. Hannah was a woman of pursuit. Why was Hannah a woman of pursuit? In Samuel, 1 Samuel chapter 1, verse 7, it says, so it was year by year when she went up to the house of the Lord that she provoked her there before she wept and did not eat. Year after year, year after year. There is every reason for Hannah not to go to the temple of the Lord. She is barren. She is broken. Her womb is barren, but she had every reason not to go to the temple of the Lord. And when she went to the temple of the Lord, they made fun of her. They looked down upon her. They did not even appreciate her. She had every reason to stay back and say, I will not go. But Hannah did not go there for people. She went there for the Lord. And that's why she pursued the Lord. She pursued the Lord with all her heart. Sometimes we have every reason not to turn up. We have every reason not to celebrate. We have every reason not to go into the presence of God. But today, there are situations that hurt her. But she did go year after year. She went to the Lord's temple, the tabernacle. She worshipped him in truth. Despite being looked down upon, despite people looking down upon her, she was a woman of pursuit. She pursued the Lord year after year. I do not know how many years, but year after year she went. The second thing about Hannah is Hannah was a woman of prayer. In Samuel 1:10, her husband did not understand her pain. Nobody could understand the ache of her heart. But in her weeping, in her sorrow, she prayed to the Lord. She prayed to the Lord. She cried out to the Lord. She knew that the Lord was her only source to go to. Because she tried everything. Every circumstance looks down upon her. But she knew she just had to look to the Lord. And how did she pray? She prayed with passion. She prayed declaring. She prayed and she cried out to the Lord. Maybe, like even Eli says, are you drunk? Sometimes when we are praying, we look funny to people. Sometimes when we are screaming, we look funny to people. But we are screaming and praying and crying out to the Lord with passion in our hearts. And if you see how Hannah prayed, she just kept praying. She kept pursuing the Lord. She kept going after. It was not that she just prayed and said, Lord, let it be done. But she was mad and she kept praying. Today I would like to encourage you. Pray with passion in your heart. Pray with that deep anguish in your heart. Or what is your barrenness? What is aching you? In verse 18, it says, Hannah was no longer sad. If you understand this, Hannah just prayed, Eli spoke to her. Hannah was no longer sad. Did she get pregnant? No. Did she have a child in her hand? No. What changed for her? What changed for her? Her heart changed. That's what prayer does. Prayer, sometimes we don't have an answer, but prayer shifts our heart that it's no longer our battle, but give it to the Lord's hand and say it's the Lord's battle. It shifts our heart to see that we've given it to the Lord and the Lord will do it. She understood that it was no longer her battle to fight. She understood that she doesn't have to strive, she doesn't have to struggle, but just rest that her Father has already done this for her. The last thing about Hannah, Hannah was a woman of praise. In Samuel chapter 2, verse 1 to 10, we see the beautiful prayer of Hannah, of how she sings praises to God, of how she just glorifies God. And our pain is transformed into praise only through prayer. And this prayer of Hannah is just not just words, but it reflected her heart that she wanted to give glory to God, glory to what God has done in her life. If you see like how Hannah praised the Lord, she dedicated her son back to the Lord. This was the promise that the Lord gave, and she gave it back to him. Sometimes we can see only our pain, our struggles, what we're going through. It's very difficult, a situation. But I would tell you, your pain is going to turn into praise. Your pain is going to turn into praise because you are believing in God. And I would like to encourage you, cry out and pray and have that anguish in the Lord. When Samuel was born and Hannah dedicated him to the Lord, Samuel was not just a blessing to Hannah, but Samuel was a blessing to the generations to come. Generations to come. And sometimes in our life we are struggling with pain, we are having ache, we just don't know. We want to know if the Lord is fulfilling the promise in our lives. But what is coming out of your pain is going to bless generations. It's not just for you to be blessed, but to bless many, many more generations. Your breakthrough, the fulfillment of your promise, is going to bless generations. Today, if you're in a place of pain, ache, I would say pursue the Lord. Pursue the Lord. Go after Him. Keep going to Him. And second thing, pray. Pray like never before. Even if it's going to take much of your time, just pray, cry out to Him, and pray. And the third thing is, when your prayer is answered, bring praises to Him. Bring praises to what He has done, because He is worthy of it. And you and I know that our pain would have never become praise if not for the Lord. Our pain would have never been a promise, never been an answered prayer, if we did not see the Lord do it for us. And the only way the pain turns into praise is through your prayer. There is victory in your prayer. There is a breakthrough waiting for you in your prayer. Your breakthrough is not for you. Your breakthrough is for generations. Your promise is not for you, your promise is for generations to come. And today I just want to leave this with you. What is that's numbing you? Which area in your life is barren, where you're saying, Lord, it just seems impossible, Lord? Pray into that, because God's going to take the praise. Pray into that, because God is going to fulfill his promise over your life. Does it seem too big? Is it too large? I do not know how many years Hannah was infertile. She was always looked down upon because she couldn't give birth. And that's what the Lord does. He's going to take your pain and take his praise through the prayer. So today, the numbness, the barrenness, the brokenness, the ache in your heart, pray into it, because God's going to take the praise. And as we just conclude, we're just having 2 prayer stations here, something that we're going to do as an act of faith. What is your ache? What is your barrenness? What is your brokenness? I'd like to encourage you to write it down, paste it there, and say, Lord, you are taking care of it. You're pasting it there, and you're shifting your heart today to say, Lord, it's no longer me struggling, me fighting. I am going to just rest that you are going to fulfill this for me. That's what prayer does. Prayer shifts your heart to know that you do it no longer with your strength, but rest in the Father's. So you can take a Post-it note, or we've been handed out Post-its. Just stick it there. And also, if you'd like to pray for somebody, just think of them, and you can have a sweet and just pray over that person, because God's going to transform pain into praise. Thank you.